Wonder Diamond, South India's largest lab-grown diamond brand, stores at Chennai, Coimbatore, Bangalore and Hyderabad.
Hello, Ashwin Saravanan, welcome to Kalata Plus.
Thank you, sir.
Like, we're going to talk about Connect, your new movie. But before that, I want to ask you one thing. It's like, why do you make horror movies? Because I'll tell you why. You make psychological horror films. So I first want to get at your psychology. And let me tell you why I'm doing this interview in English, because your film is getting released in Tamil and Telugu and Hindi. So I just want this to kind of be a all coverage kind of thing. So I hope you're comfortable with that.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so why do you make horror films?
I'm a fan of the genre. I grew up
That's the
watching.
easy answer.
Yeah, that's an easy answer. See, the reason why I really want to kind of express myself in that particular genre is that there are certain themes that I want to deal with. And when you're dealing with certain dark themes, it's very hard to pass through those themes through say, a drama or, a normal film. Like, see, if I talk about, with respect to Connect, if I call up a producer and if I tell him, I want to make a film about what it means to be stuck inside a house during the lockdown, about feeling hopelessness, about feeling fear and anxiety and all that, he's going to yawn. He's not going to, if I tell him, I'm going to make a film, a horror film about a family being stuck in different parts of the country and not being able to meet each other, and the girl gets possessed. And the only way they can help the girl is by doing an exorcism. But the priest who's supposed to do the exorcism is stuck in Mumbai. He can't come over. So the only way this can happen is through a Zoom call, is through virtual means. And immediately, I mean, you pique my interest. Let's just talk further. So whenever you kind of tell stories in a genre framework, it's much easier to pitch it, not just to producers but to actors as well, because everybody is looking for a marketable idea. It's not about the stories or the kind of themes that you are dealing with. It's for you, and it's also for the audience. But with respect to mounting a film, with respect to telling, with respect to assembling a cast and a crew, you really have to pitch a film that's worth marketable. So it becomes very important for me to make films in the genre space, so that it becomes easier for me to kind of pitch it to people and take it forward.
Right, but does this also have some root in, let's say, your childhood fear of darkness, which you've spoken about?
Yeah.
Like you've spoken about, like you were afraid to get up in the middle of the night to go and, get a glass of water or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
So, is there also a little bit of that?
I think I'm a very anxious person. I always feel anxiety in my gut. Even when I go for, I mean,
You
even
feel it
before,
now?
yeah, even before coming to the interview, I was just wondering, what can I talk about the film? So I always feel this anxiety whenever I'm about to do something that's important to me. So I feel a lot of emotions that I want to kind of. It's very hard to put it into words, or I'm not very good at expressing things verbally. So the best way for me to express these things through my writing and through films, through images. So I think invariably, what happens is, after I finish a film, after I finish, something interesting happened during Maya. The DP of the film, Satyan Suryan, asked me a question during the shoot. He asked, Ashwin, what is this film about? So I told him, this film is about a woman who goes to a theater. No, 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 no. What is this film about? He said, what do you mean? You mean the story, right? No, no, no. What is the theme of the film? I have to summarize the whole film in a single word. What would you use? And I was just thinking about it the whole night. I didn't have an answer. And I went back, I just started thinking about it, and then I finished the film. I finished the film without knowing the answer to that question. And after the film, released and people started talking about it, and the one word that I kept hearing again and again from the audience is that I really love the mother angle. I really love the fact that it is revealed in the end that it was the mother who was trying to reach out to the child. And then the answer came to me. The film was about motherhood.
Okay.
It can refer to Apsara's character who's doing things for a child. It can also refer to the spirit that's doing things for the child. So the film is essentially about how far a mother is willing to go to reach out to the child or to protect the child. That's what the film is about.
Right.
So that I found out only in retrospect.
Right.
And for Game Over, while I was writing it, I was not really aware. And when I was discussing the film with the producer, Sashikant sir, so we were discussing about a lot of things, and eventually it became clear to me and the co-writer of the film that the film is about trauma and recovery. It's about the recovery of a person who experienced trauma and how she psychologically is fractured and how she puts her life back together. That's what the film is about. It is in the genre of slasher or home invasion thriller, but it is essentially about trauma and recovery. So for me, it happens only in retrospect or during the making of the film. I kind of understand the film better.
Yeah.
So when you ask me this question that, why horror, I'm not able to give you an answer that kind of comes out of me. It's usually, I can only look back at my films and understand why I made those films during that period of time. And then I kind of understand, why did I make that film? Why did I make Game Over? Why
Right.
did I make Maya when I was like, 24? So every time it comes to me, it comes to me in retrospect. So I don't know if I have a convincing answer for you, but this is what I feel.
Oh, so why did you make Connect?
During the lockdown, like everybody else, I was stuck at home and I was feeling hopeless. I was feeling hopeless that I'm not going to make films. I might not even be alive in a couple of months. And I was very anxious for my parents. And it was just that I could not think past the void that was in all our lives. So in some way, I wanted to kind of process those emotions in a film.
Okay.
Because I wanted to express, and I thought the best genre to do that is through horror. So how do you capture the horror of a lockdown experience through a horror film? I don't want to do it as a drama. I wanted to kind of set a horror film in lockdown and see how far the stakes can be raised. And I was researching for another film. And surprisingly, there was a footnote in a book that I was reading which mentioned about a priest resorting to performing exorcism through a Skype call if he is too old to travel or if he is incapacitated. So suddenly, the book was actually written like 20 years back. And suddenly, when I was reading it, I was just thinking, okay, this is more relevant to me now
Now.
than it would have been years ago. So what if somebody gets possessed during the lockdown, and what if the priest is not able to actually come and help? So immediately, we can do it virtually. The prospect of doing the exorcism virtually suddenly opened up the whole film for me, and that was the third act.
Right.
The third act of the film wrote itself.
Are you giving away spoilers here or?
No, I mean the trailer is out. It's pretty
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
there. It's out there that the
Right.
film is
Right.
about exorcism. And the one thing that I want to kind of underline here is that the story is not groundbreaking or like it's never been done before. I don't want to say those things because when you're working in the genre space, whatever subgenre that you're making, this being demonic possession slash exorcism, there are like classics out there. There are like so many films. Even in Tamil, Melindrau made Aval, which is about exorcism and what happens to this girl. So, but for me, what is interesting to me is that setting it in the context of lockdown, where a family, members of the family are in different places and they're not able to connect with each other, and just this prospect of being isolated, and how this mother is left to kind of save her daughter, and what happens there, how it kind of the family comes together and fights this and finds hope and recovers from this whole. So for me, this was like more of a family story, and that's what actually made the film interesting for me.
Right.
If I'm not looking for that emotional, if I'm not having that emotional angle for a high concept, then I'll not make this film.
Right.
Even though the idea is enticing, it is not enough for me to tell a story for 90 minutes or 2 hours, so to speak. I want an emotional angle. I want character arcs for me to be interested in those characters, because if I'm not invested in those characters, the horror will not work for me. The
Right.
more you root for the characters, the scarier the film becomes.
Now, in retrospect, can you say that just like you explained Game Over was about trauma and recovery and that Maya was about motherhood, can you retrospect and say that Connect was basically about dealing with your anxiety about the lockdown?
Yeah, among other things, there are a few other themes that I want audience to discover on their own when they watch the film. I don't want to talk about it. It might go into spoiler territory. But what I wanted to essentially kind of express to this film is finding hope in the face of adversity.
Right.
Like, we all went through this period and it might be over. A couple of people actually asked me, the lockdown is over, everybody has moved on. Why do you think the film is still relevant? So for me, we might have taken off the mask,
Yeah.
but I don't think we have really processed what happened during the period. So many people lost their lives. So many people lost their loved ones, and they're still processing it. And it's not something that you get over like in a matter of months. It is something that you need to genuinely process and understand. And that is where I feel stories and films can play a huge part to help people make sense of what has happened to them in the last few
Right,
years.
right.
And to understand that, okay, we went through this huge challenge together and we have found light at the end of the tunnel. We have found hope again. So I think that's a very important, it's not a message, but it's a very important story to be told, especially in a time like this, for us to process and understand what happened to us.
Like you say, message is a vulgar word, but the takeaway is what you're talking about.
Definitely.
Like that's a nice thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's a like you have this thing and you're kind of you're watching it, and then when you walk home, you're kind of, when you're processing it, it kind
Yeah.
of you take away a bunch
No,
of things.
definitely, because stories are meant to reassure you that you're not alone, like, that you belong, that you have not gone through this experience alone.
Right.
So a lot of people might even be hesitant to talk about what happened during, they might have gone through depression, they might have gone through so many issues, health issues and financial issues, and they might not be able to talk about it. Maybe there's stigma to it and all that. But when you watch films, you safely kind of live out your anxieties through these characters. And that is, I think, one of the reasons why I love horror films. Because in your safe space, you can live out your fears and anxieties through
Yeah.
these
Yeah,
characters.
your deepest, darkest fears.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
one of the most horrible things that happened to you, it's almost like a horror film, which is the stalling of iruvaakaalam, which is like nobody knows when it's going to come out. What is it like to be in that situation?
I think, see, there is these 5 stages to grief, right? You start with shock, and then, denial, and then you kind of, start bargaining, and then eventually you become extremely depressed and all that, and then you accept it, right? I think you go through all these 5 stages in different parts of the journey. So for me, it happened very early on in my career. After I finished Maya, I actually had a few offers, very good offers, but I really wanted to finish writing my next script before taking up an offer, because I just felt that I'll get carried away if I just sign a project, and then if I start going into that kind of, let's just make films because I have an opportunity. I didn't want to do that. So for me, it took a while to write the script, and after I started pitching it to producers, then I understood how difficult it is to actually pitch your film like 8 months, 9 months after your success. Then it's a different. I mean, you're not as fresh. Like, you suddenly people like, okay, who are you again? Like, oh, last year, oh, okay. So that the relevance is gone. I'm talking about like 7 years ago. So when I pitched iruvaakaalam, and I made the film, I was extremely passionate about the film, because the film is very important to me in the sense that it is not a horror film. It is not the kind of thrillers that I usually make. It's a little different from what I've done.
Okay.
So it was very important for me to kind of explore that side of me, and tell that story. And I had a terrific set of cast, starting with S.J. Surya sir and Vamika and Shivada and a lot of people. And I absolutely loved making that film. And it's like, see, the closest analogy I can get into is by when your child goes missing, and you're not able to find it, and you don't know whether the child is dead or alive, and you don't know if the child will ever come back. It might look like I'm dramatizing, but
No,
that's exactly how it feels. Because should I hope that the child will come back someday, or should I move on assuming that it's dead? So you are kind of caught between two worlds, and you don't know where to go.
right.
So I think Game Over came out of that. Like, I was feeling lost. I don't know how to process it. And I think Game Over came out of my anger. Anger at being helpless, anger at being stranded, that without, I didn't have the power or the money to move things forward. And as a creative person, even in Iraivi, S.J. Surya's character in the film, is about a filmmaker who's feeling extremely frustrated that the film hasn't released. And it is something a lot of people ask me. Even today, I get a lot of messages. Every day, I get a message. And it's like a trigger every single time. Every single time someone asks me about the film, it's like it hits you all over again. And you have to kind of relive those memories. Not that, I mean, I'm responsible for the film equally. So I have to answer. I owe people an answer, but I wish I knew what answer I can give, because I don't have an answer
Right.
with respect to what happens to the film or whether it'll ever release. And it puts me in a very tough spot as to whether I should hope or give up. I still don't know. I still don't have an answer.
Right.
I think I'm not the only person who's gone through this.
No, there are many
Yeah,
people, but I
yeah.
want, because, like you said, you don't know if your child is dead or alive, right? So that's like a limbo situation. It's a horrible limbo situation to be in. Have you processed it? Have you gotten over it? Or
I think what I can safely say is it has taught me a lot.
okay,
A lot of things I was very I think back then I just felt like, I was in control of everything.
right,
When your film becomes successful, you suddenly think that you know what you're doing, and everything feels nice, and everybody's nice to you, and you just feel like anything is possible. And then the reality kicks in, and then you learn so much during this period. You learn patience, you learn so much of perseverance, and you meet people, and you understand that there are so many people out there who are fighting their own battles, and it kind of humbles you in a lot of ways.
right,
And it helps you understand that film industry is not something that you can take for granted. Like, it's not something, if you're making a film, it's a miracle. When people actually say that, why are you making a big deal about the film's release, or rather, generally when people say that why do you keep sharing stuff and all that, I always tell them making a film is a miracle. It's a miracle any film gets made. It doesn't matter if it's a low budget film or a big budget film,
Right.
or if it's a failure or it's a disaster, it's a blockbuster. It's a miracle any film gets made. So every time you go out there, you shoot something, you put something out there for an audience, it's there for eternity. And I'll always be grateful for that. I think this period really helped me understand who I am as an artist and what kind of stories that I wanted to tell.
Right.
I suddenly did not have anything to lose. So when you have things to lose, you start becoming very attached to results, and you can start making calculated moves as a filmmaker. After iruvaakaalam, I didn't care. I can make whatever I want to make because I have nothing left to lose.
Right.
So there is this line from this film that I really like, Gautam's film, Karki, where Kali Venkat's character gets warned in the restroom about if you take up this case, you'll lose everything. And then Kali will say, sir, what do I have in my hands to lose? I have nothing left. So that's what I felt when iruvaakaalam kind of got stalled. And after that, creatively, I was able to push myself and I was able to express myself better, I feel.
So it's like basically, it's like the worst has happened. Now what else can happen?
Exactly. You hit the bottom of the, it's just like, you can only go up from there.
Right. Hopefully, the trauma that was processed in Game Over helped you a lot. You seem
Yeah,
to
it
be
did.
smiling now.
It
So,
did.
Yeah, yeah.
did.
You seem to be a person who reads a lot, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So, I mean, because you kept mentioning about reading something, researching something. Now, do you think reading is a good tool for a filmmaker?
See, let me put it this way. See, whenever I read something, I actually read the same book over and over. Because whenever I make a film, or rather write a particular script, when I read the same book, the book makes different sense to me.
Right.
If I can, I mean, if at all that makes sense, because reading the book in different parts of your life actually, it kind of hits you
Oh, of course.
differently
Yeah,
every
yeah,
single time.
yeah. I mean,
So
yeah.
just like films.
It's like films. You
Yeah,
watch a
exactly.
film at age
Yeah.
10 versus age
Yeah.
20, age
Yeah.
30. It's a
Yeah,
different film.
So every time you make a film, I think you start from scratch.
Right.
Personally, I feel for me, it's like whenever I finish a film and I'm starting on a new one, I actually genuinely, I'm not being humble here, I genuinely don't know what I'm going to do. It's like there's a mountain in front of me and I don't know how to take the first step. And when I'm starting from scratch, I actually feel this lightness of being a beginner. So I read a lot and I talk to people and I just do research, and it's very exciting for me because I'm not carrying any baggages of, okay, this is expected of me, so I have to deliver, because nobody's expecting anything of me. So I might as well just go out and express myself. So books help me understand a lot about my own creative process. And recently I was reading about, I was going through a crisis recently about what kind of stories should I tell, what kind of films should I make, and all that. So should I make films that have mainstream appeal, or should I continue to make films that speak to me? And I was reading about this particular thing called creative identity crisis.
That's the title of the book?
It's not the title of the book, it's the title of the article that I read.
Okay, all right.
So there's a term called creative identity crisis, where an artist is thinking about what is it that I want to express. Should I write books that sell, or should I write books that speak to me? Where do I draw the line? Where do I draw the, and every time, I mean, for 10 years you make certain kind of films. If you look at certain filmmakers' career, the first decade will be filled with certain kind of films. In second decade, there'll be a transition. There'll be a transition where they'll go into a different zone.
Right.
So that's like their identity getting kind of, it's evolving like along with the filmmaker, and they'll make different kinds of films then. Right. So in a lot of filmmakers, the filmmakers that are very interesting to me, I always look at how their career has evolved over a period of time, and how they change and how they adapt to different genres or stories or themes. So for me, that's very interesting part, because for me to understand myself, for me to write, I need to understand more about myself.
Right.
So only then I can express.
Right.
Yeah.
So you think films are a mode of self-expression?
100%.
But no, when you say 100%, I know there are a lot of people who might not agree with you because they write every scene with an audience in mind.
Yeah.
You don't write with an audience in
No,
mind.
I am the audience.
Yeah. So you write for yourself.
I write for myself.
Right. So, and if it turns out well, you then say, okay.
Exactly. See, if it is exciting to me, 90% of the time it will be exciting. But obviously, there will be a section of audience who will not relate
Sure.
to your film,
Right.
no matter what you do. I feel bad that happens, but I think most of the time you are looking at, if I'm writing a scene and if I'm feeling a little scared, and if I'm feeling like, am I alone in this room, or you get a feeling of this chills, then you know that you are in a good space.
Right.
And hopefully that feeling will translate to the audience, to the viewer who's watching the film.
Right.
So I'm only thinking about what is the scene doing to me.
Right.
I'm not thinking about will they whistle or clap in the theater.
Right.
That's just a result.
Right.
If I start factoring in the result during the process, at least that's how it works for me.
Yeah.
It's different for different filmmakers, and they're all very effective in their own ways. But for me, the process is very personal.
Yeah, but that makes complete sense. And so I'm going to ask you this. It's like you come across as a very practical person, a very sensitive, emotional person. Why haven't you yet made a movie where a man is exposed to all these traumas or these situations that your female protagonists go through? I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong, but I mean, throughout the world, it's almost like horror films means woman in danger. It's like it's almost like a trope. I don't know whether
Oh, definitely. There's even a book called Gender in Horror Cinema.
Right.
There's so much of essays written about how the role of women in, I mean, right, starting from Exorcist to Rosemary's Baby and
Right.
all that.
Yeah, yeah.
So women are always seen as vulnerable, and there's no agency. Like, at least the way they were perceived, when a woman is walking alone at night, you inherently feel scared than if a man walks, because a man, that somewhere he'll fight and fend off. It's a very limiting view. But I think what is interesting to me is there's this term called the final girl. There's a trope called the final girl in slasher films. The final girl is the character who's essentially a woman who is the last survivor, and she's the one who finds the strength to kind of fight and defeat the killer or someone who's doing this. And I find that oddly, empowering in a way, because usually it's the hero who's the one who survives and defeats the villain. In a lot of slashes, modern slashes and also classic ones, you have this final girl trope, which is very interesting. And see, it is these genres are very, I think they're relatively fresh in India. In Hollywood, these are staple genres, and it's been done to death. And in India, it's relatively new. And for me, see, iruvaakaalam was that film, the film that you're talking about. That was about a man who really, goes through hell, and how he kind of, fights not in a literal way, but how he fights his own demons, and how he kind of finds redemption is what that film is about. And I think it comes down to the story, and who's the best character to kind of represent that particular story.
Right.
So for me, for iruvaakaalam can only happen to a man, cannot happen to a woman.
Right.
When you watch the film, you'll understand. So I think I also have ideas where the protagonist will be a man,
Right.
and his journey, and I think I'll eventually get to it.
I'm not asking you to do that. I'm just asking you why. I mean, like, just because, and not just you, but it's across the horror genre. It's like
Yeah.
that generally seems to be
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what you said, the final girl.
No, but I'll tell you this. It might sound like a complaint, but I genuinely want to address this as far as my experience is concerned. When I'm pitching gameover to Tapsi, or pitching Maya to Nayanthara ma'am, or pitching Connect to her, they're open to these films. I'm not saying men are not open to these films, but you need to understand that these are not regular films. These are mainstream films, but they are not staple films. They're not mass masala films. And sometimes when the idea is a little eccentric, there might be resistance.
Right, that's
So even I remember watching an interview, if I'm not wrong, Anupam Sinha talked about how female actresses are far more adventurous and risk taking when it comes to script choices, which is changing now, which is evolving, and I would love to do. See, these films I never pitched it to male actors, but I've had situations where I've pitched genre films to male actors, and there was a little bit of resistance. I'm not saying everybody is like that, but we are still evolving in the genre space, and we are still evolving as a community with respect to like making films for a certain class of audience, not class, but certain section of audience.
Right, right.
There might be people who might never watch horror films, but we have a sizable audience who enjoy horror films.
Right.
But there is a resistance that if I make a genuine, pure genre horror piece, there might not be enough takers.
Right.
There's the genuine fear among a lot of stakeholders, actors and producers included. Just because I made Maya, I was able to make Game Over and Connect. I don't know if somebody with a new script can come and pitch a film like Game Over and get it made right now.
Right.
Which is scary.
And actually, from what you're saying, I'm taking off another thing, which is like when you're talking about stars, like male stars, I don't know if they necessarily want to be seen as vulnerable, because there is a certain like heroic thread that runs through. It doesn't have to be mass heroism. The very nature of horror films requires you to be, at least for three-quarters of the film or whatever it is, it requires you to be in a very vulnerable space, like opening out the fact that you are powerless. Maybe that has something to do as well. I'm just theorizing. So
I'll talk about a recent film that I absolutely enjoyed, Tiruchitrambalam.
yeah,
The protagonist, even in the final scene where he's expected to fight, he's not just like, walking in slow motion and
yeah,
kicking
yeah,
the
yeah.
shit out of the villain. He's just like, fighting like how,
Improvising.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And throughout the film, there is so much of vulnerability and so much of, his character feels so real and so
yeah,
relatable. I,
yeah,
I absolutely love the film.
yeah,
And I can't see many actors doing that.
yeah.
Honestly, because in retrospect, Tiruchitrambalam can look like a safe film. It can look like a blockbuster film with family emotions and everything. But on paper, that film wouldn't have appealed to a lot of people.
Actually, it's for me that film. I'm glad you brought it up because I love talking about that film. It's actually a story of a very very dysfunctional family.
Exactly.
And people came out of it saying, "Oh, what a lovely rom-com." I'm
Yeah.
like, "Excuse me, did we see the same movie?" Because you're talking about a guy who blames his father for something
Yeah.
and therefore has decided to destroy himself and not give his father the satisfaction of seeing him succeed.
Yeah.
And there is an older man who's basically keeping the balance in the
Yeah.
house.
See, it's three generations of men learning to live with each other.
Yeah, it's its own kind of horror film actually. If you
Yeah,
look at
exactly.
it,
See,
yeah.
see, even in the scene where the father is apologizing to him, see, these films might look deceptively simple, if I can use that word, but there's so much of writing that goes
No,
behind
it's
it.
actually very complicated script.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. Because how do you sustain the audience's interest where there's like literally nothing happening? It's just like three episodes from a man's life and how it affects his family, how it affects his own relationship with his
Right.
father,
Right.
and how it kind of it's almost a coming of age film, and the film actually it came in a very important time. I'll tell you why. I'm talking a lot about that film, but it came at a time when there was this hyper masculine films going on, doing massive business all over the country, like Vikram, Triple R, and
KGF.
KGF and all that. And this film is like quiet as a breeze, and suddenly it comes in, and people are loving it, and it restores your faith in good storytelling, and still believe in the classic value of telling a good story without resorting. I'm not saying that the problem with films like KGF, Triple R, the only problem with films like them becoming blockbusters is that people want only that. People, meaning the producers or the trade, wants only such films.
Yeah.
Without action, they'll say this is not sellable.
Right.
Every time a film becomes a successful project, it becomes a yardstick through which all the other films are compared and measured,
Right.
which is, I feel, is a very regressive approach to making films. Because when Tiruchitrambalam came, it did not have a safety net.
Yeah.
It did not have like, okay, this is going to bring in like 60, 70 crores in the opening. It's not going to happen. It is a film made purely for the love of cinema and for the love of the audience,
Yeah.
who enjoy good old family dramas. We grew up with watching family dramas, and
Yeah.
that is something that's very fundamental and primal about cinema in Tamil.
The other thing that was very refreshing about Tiruchitrambalam, which goes back to your films as well, is that you have Dhanush playing. He's not playing a hero; he's playing a character.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what your films are also about. It's about, whether it's Nayanthara or whether it's kind of a thing. You don't get that stuff that they are a heroine. They're very, they're characters. They're playing a particular like a person rather than trying to be the person who's carrying the film on their shoulders. Which takes me to this question: when you have a star like Nayanthara, because one thing I've generally observed is that most horror slasher films, they have worked with a small cast, like the Scream trilogy, or
Yeah.
like kind of a thing. I mean, I was trying to think of a movie with a big star, and with respect to horror, and the only thing that came to mind immediately was The Omen. Because at that point, Gregory Peck was this
Yeah.
mega, he, of course, at that point he was older in age and all
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
but he
yeah.
was still,
Still,
he
yeah.
was still Gregory Peck, and he dies. The thing is, it's like you don't expect a star to die,
Yeah.
and that's why I think a lot of these people, these films have smaller stars because anybody can die.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you don't know.
All bets are off, like
they're all
anything can
like
happen.
when Karthik makes a Mercury or something like that,
Yeah,
Karthik
yeah,
Subraj,
yeah.
they're all stars of a certain stature who have not yet attained a certain stardom. So
Yeah.
they're all kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But when you have a Nayanthara who's the superstar, does it kind of give the audience the assurance that, okay, if this person is going to live through the end, she's going to conquer it, kind of a thing? Does that kind of play on you sometimes? Like, what if we? I mean, of course, there's this entire trade angle to that. I'm not bringing that into it.
Yeah.
And of course, she's an as an actor. That also I'm not bringing to it. You're comfortable with her. You worked with her. You know what she's capable of delivering and all that. But I'm just saying, from the point of the audience, I kind of know that it's all going to end well.
Yeah, definitely. I think, see, for me as a writer director, what is most important is the connection that the audience have with the protagonist of the film. Uh, I'm talking not as the off-screen connection that they have. That even when they watch the film, I need to feel like I love this person, even if I don't like them off screen. Especially if I don't like them off screen, I have to really ensure that no matter who plays it, they have to have this connection.
Right.
And these people, I think I fundamentally, they are stars, they're superstars in their own right. But the reason why I enjoy working with them is because they're so endearing and they are terrific actors. So what the kind of value that they add to the script as an actor is something that you become complete as a writer when an actor says your line.
Right.
When people like Nayanthara ma'am or Anupam Kher sir, Sathyaraj sir says your line, you are sitting back like a king, thinking that you have written something like William Goldman. Like you're so happy that, okay, I've written something. So an actor really makes your script sing. So I think that is one of the reasons why I wanted to work with him. And see, I'm not concerned so much about the result as much as the process. I'll tell you this again. Because for me, the film needs to get made, and the film needs to be made in a certain budget for it to be convincing for the audience.
Right.
That's where the star comes in for me. The rest, 90%, is just me figuring out how to create this authentic, emotion, or what is it that I'm going for, flavor that I'm going for. My process is purely on how do I get this moment right on camera? How do I make the script come alive? So that is when an actor's experience and their body of work really comes into the equation.
Right.
And with these actors, they really come in and make it their own, and they make my job so much easier.
Right.
Because I never got this in Maya. In Maya, we were shooting the film in 35 days, and that film was shot in the peak of summer, and we were shooting at night in forest, and you can't start rolling until it's 8 p.m., until it's completely dark, and you're not left with a lot of time to shoot. So for me, I was running around getting the film done. I never had the space or time to work with actors. For every film of mine after that, all the three films, I've enjoyed working with actors because I genuinely, relish the pleasure I get out of sitting with them, talking to them, and getting their performance on camera and creating that moment. There is something inherently very satisfying about that. So I think that is the reason why I go after actors like them. And the fact that they are also stars is like a bonus for
Like a
me.
bonus,
Yeah.
yeah. I read an interview about you where you said that you go largely with your instinct, but you didn't explain it, and I didn't understand that statement because I thought every writer kind of follows an instinct. But can you explain what you meant by that?
See, you kind of an idea strikes you. You come up with some fragment of an idea or a story or a character or something, and you live in an industry where you have to constantly pitch things to people, to producers, to actors, to your own family, to your friends, and you are constantly getting shot down. They're saying no, it's not working, it's not interesting enough. Okay, that's all. What else is there? So if you're relying on an external person's opinion of what you're doing, you're going to get lost because one person will say it's really good, another person will say no, it doesn't sound interesting to me. So if you're looking for external validation, it's never going to come. Even after you finish the film, for every film of mine, there are people who love the film, there are people who hate the film, and in a way, I can't agree or disagree with both of them. It is their opinion and it's their own. I can't have a conversation with them where I'm trying to justify
Sure.
if the film is as good as bad as they think it is. So for me, that instinct is extremely important because that is where I feel okay. This is interesting to me, and there are times when I grapple with self doubt. There are times when I grapple with a lot of anxiety because I don't know. There are times when I finish editing the film and I think it's absolute garbage. And there are times when I finally crack something and I feel like, shit, this is working, this is magical. And it's all part of the process. So relying on instinct is far more it's me. I can always, turn to me.
truer.
Exactly. And you can't fake it. You can't fake your instinct. It is something that, I mean, in your gut, you know that it's working.
It's okay.
And even if people say no, even if people say, no, it's not working or I don't want to do this, you know in your gut that there is something to it. And that is the kind of gut I'm looking for in a producer or as an actor. And I'm really lucky that I got it with all my films because all my producers and actors genuinely believed in the film and they let me do what I wanted to do. And it comes from gut because you can't actually slot connect into, okay, this film came out, it became successful, so let's make connect. You can't do that. Game over, no, there was no reference for game over.
Right.
You can't say like, okay, this film came out and this thing and it did really well, so let's do game over. So all these films did not have safety nets, and it took the generosity or rather the risk of the producer for it to become an actual film. So I think I'm really grateful that I also work with people who share my instinct for certain material.
At what stage do you begin to share it with other people for feedback?
That's interesting. Like, see, initially when I write like a one-page summary or rather a synopsis, I share it with people, and then they don't like it. So then I started thinking, okay, maybe I need to write a 4-page summary, and then if I share it with people, they'll understand. And okay, then okay, then I started sharing 4-page summaries with people. They still didn't like it, and then I thought, okay, let me write the step outline, and then people will understand what the film is about. I wrote the step outline, and then I started sharing it to people. Then they didn't get it even then. And then I realized, okay, maybe I'm discovering the film as I'm writing, and even I don't completely understand the film until the script is written.
Right.
Steve Jobs mentioned in an interview about protecting your egg. Like when a new idea is like an egg, and you have to be very very fragile and you have to safeguard it because if you drop it, it's gonna break and it's gonna like you can never have it back.
Right.
And you have to wait and hold it close till it hatches and starts flying. So till the idea reaches that stage where it starts flying, you really have to protect it because there will be multiple no's along the way, or like indifference or whatever, rejection or whatever it is. But I think you have to protect that initial excitement that you have for a particular idea, that initial spark that you had, right? That suddenly you wake up in the middle of the night and you think, holy shit, this is a great idea. Let me write it down. It might be shit the next morning, but still that spark that you felt when you conceived the idea, I think you have to protect it like a mother, like you have to protect it, and it might turn out to be nothing, or it might be turn out to be something special. You don't know, but if you kind of start listening to people so much or take them seriously, then you lose so much of your valuable ideas, which had the potential to be something.
Right.
Yeah.
So it comes back to the thing about you writing with yourself in mind.
Yeah, definitely. See, I interestingly for Game Over and Connect, I worked with another writer,
Yeah.
Kavya Ramkumar, and
Just call her your wife.
yeah, I want her to be known as a co-writer first, and
She
then
is
my
a
wife.
co-writer. Yeah. That's true.
So yeah, so when I work with her, it's like, see, it's very comfortable because she can criticize me without me feeling like a failure, or I can criticize her without her. See, when you ride with a loved one, it is a safe space where you can healthily critique each other and fight with each other and tear each other's hair out without feeling like you are in a negative space,
Right.
right? So in a production environment, it might be very different because every single word in the script is money. So their scrutinizing of the material is very different from what you would do with your. So you have to create your own safe space where you can healthily exchange ideas and shoot down each other's ideas, and try as much as you can to make the idea the best version of itself.
Right.
So since I work with her, it becomes much easier for me because I'm constantly sharing things with her.
Right.
So it becomes easier.
At one stage, let's assume that you have this script that really works for you, and you're really like at this point you know that there's nothing else you can do. You've gotten inputs, you've incorporated those inputs into your story. It's done. But you go and hand it over to a producer, and the producer is now like, you know what? At this point, can we do this? At this point, can we do that? And your mind is kind of fractured because it's like everything is so tightly kind of interlocked that if you do that, the film is kind of going to, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
How do you handle those situations?
I think it's very unique for each film. If you're asking for Connect, I pitched the script to them. I kind of, once they read the whole script with me, go ahead and do the film.
Right.
That was all. That was it. The
right.
only requirement that they had is the film has to be scary. That's all they had. That was the only note.
Right.
That's all. It has to be scary. Find a way to make it scary.
Right. So Vignesh kind of pretty much like Vignesh
As a
Shivan
filmmaker,
and
I think he understood that I needed my space,
Right.
and he understood what I was trying to go for. And his only requirement was the film is to be scary, be sincere to its genre. Don't try to dilute it. Let just go all out. Just make it as scary as possible, and that was it. And for my other films, it's different. For every film, for Game Over, Why Not Studios had a development team. So I sat with them and we discussed every draft, and it was a safe space where we, Sumant, who's the co-writer of Family Man, he was the one who actually
Suman, I think.
Suman, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
I hope he forgives me for this. So Suman Kumar, he actually he heard the pitch for Game Over and he really liked it, and he's the reason why that film was made.
Right.
So he approved it when it was on a pitch stage, and then later we got into development and we started discussing with the team, the development team at Why Not, and we went through several drafts, and that process was very smooth for me because they all understood storytelling.
Right.
There was no like requirement of, can we put some song here, or can we put some can we put some other element that's not needed. They were only thinking character arc, story, theme, structure. They were only thinking in those terms. So
Right.
since they are speaking the same language, it was very easy for me.
I really want to thank you for one thing, which is to kind of, even though we're talking about connect, you really took me through a lot of the thought process that goes into writing and what a writer slash director feels like. There are two ways you can protect this feeling that you've conveyed to me right now. One is to continue doing these, I wouldn't say niche films, but within the mainstream, they are a niche kind of a thing, because that's what you want to do. That's what your instinct tells you to do, like we just discussed, and that's what comes to you well. But then, is there another part of you that says, I want to go full on mainstream? I want to become a different kind of, being known as a good filmmaker is already a success, right? And I think you've already achieved that success. But I'm talking about being known as a filmmaker who brings in 100 crores, 200 crores, 300 crores. Not that you can predict it, but I'm saying, at least, is that a goal that you might, is that something that you've ever looked at?
See, I'm not interested in results as much as I'm interested in the
You've
process.
told that repeatedly.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, see, I'll tell you where my process comes in. I want to tell stories.
Right.
I don't want to be known as a particular filmmaker. This is a mainstream filmmaker, or this is a genre filmmaker. So I want to tell stories that are inherently interesting to me. And the reason why I'm repeating this is the spark that.
No, I'm sorry if I insulted you.
Sorry.
I just meant that, like, you.
No, I understand.
Yeah,
I understand what you're
yeah,
trying to tell
yeah,
me, because I think it's essential for me to answer this question, because a lot of people have kept asking me, including my relatives, including a lot of people kept asking me, when are you going to do the big film, or when are you going to do the film, the hero film, and all that. And I think I've answered this before, because for me, making films is not like climbing a corporate ladder, where you start in a certain position,
Right.
and then you go to a higher position, you get better pay, and then you go to the top position, and you get all the perks that are associated with it. I don't look at it that way. If I wanted it that way, then I would have worked in a different company. I wouldn't be working in this particular industry. For me, I think I want to tell stories, and I want to tell stories that are inherently interesting to me, because I need to sustain that interest or that spark for that particular idea or the story
Right.
for at least 2 to 3 years. It takes me 2 years to make a film.
Yeah.
And it is very easy to run out of steam. And after time, you are so stressed out, and you're so tired, and you don't want to continue, and you're just dealing with people. It gets so hard that the only thing that you keep going back to is the initial excitement you had for a particular story.
Right.
So if I'm not feeling that excitement, it doesn't matter if I'm making a 1 crore film or a 60 crore film, it's not going to make sense to me. And if it's not interesting to me, it definitely will not be interesting to the audience, and I'll be wasting their time, which I don't want to do. So whenever I want to tell stories, I want to take my time. I want to understand why I want to tell that particular story. And if it is a mainstream film, if it is a big film, I'll be more than glad to do it.
Right.
Because I think the motivation is coming from the story itself, rather than like a means to an end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is something that I don't want to pursue, because I think that's a completely different path.
Right.
Because I respect people who do that, and I admire people who do that, who actually balance their own artistic sensibilities with mainstream, success, like what Lokesh has managed to do with Kaidi and Vikram. It's remarkable that he has managed to marry his artistic ambition with mainstream Tamil mainstream storytelling, That's something that I constantly admire. But it's a journey that he has chosen to take. It's a journey that he is very passionate about.
Yeah.
And I think every filmmaker has to find his own journey and has to follow whatever that is inherently interesting to him or her. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I think that's a very good takeaway. I think we mentioned takeaways long back in the interview, but I think that's a very good takeaway, because especially now, I think it's how individualistic your stories are that's going to kind of determine your success, whether financial success or creative success. Because we know that people just aren't easily going to go to theaters anymore, right? It's not like the older days where I'm bored, let's go to a movie. That thing has completely gone now. It's more like it's worth a visit to theater. I want to go there. That's kind of become what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that space can be maintained only if, like you say, you're trying to give them a truly unique experience.
Yeah, and it's not easy. I'll tell you that because every time you make an individualistic film as an artist, it's not a straightforward path. It's not something that it's not a linear path. It's not like you start from A and end in Z. It's not like that, because every step of the way you'll be questioned, you'll be doubted, and you yourself will doubt yourself. Like you yourself will have so much of insecurity about whether what I'm doing is either worth watching or not. But that's because only because it's not been done before. If it's done before, it's much easier to say that
Right.
okay, I've seen this film, this is exactly like that. That film worked, this should work. But when you don't have a safety net, I think that is when it becomes interesting to the audience, because they'll be watching the film and suddenly, oh, okay, this is going in this direction. I didn't expect it. Okay, I thought this is going, and that is when people get very excited. I've seen it in theaters.
Yeah.
I can feel the energy when they realize that. I mean, I was watching Love Today recently, and I was enjoying the film, and I understood how subversive the film is.
Yeah.
Like it can look very entertaining and all that, but that film is actually visually and also in terms of storytelling, it's very subversive.
Actually, screenplay is one of the most interesting in recent times.
Yeah, because then you are constantly surprising the audience, and also they like the rug being pulled under their feet. They enjoy it because that is what they're paying. They want to be surprised. They want to be shown something that they've not seen before. So, which is something that every artist aspires to, because I think what they're looking for is the film. It's not a film. It's not like I want to just watch a film. Let me just go. They want to watch the film. Just give me your best film. I want to watch that. I don't want to watch another film that is made by you. I think that's the requirement that's coming from them nowadays.
Can you just explain that last bit? I don't want to watch another film made by you. What is that?
See, it's like when I met I don't want to mention name, when I met an actor like a couple of years ago, he mentioned, I pitched a story to them. It was not interesting to him. So he said, what is the film that you really want to make?
Okay.
I want to be a part of that film. I told him, this is the film I really want to make. So he thought I was just trying to make another film to kind of pass time so that I can make the film.
Oh, okay, okay.
So that's what I meant. Like, what is when a filmmaker will have a dream project, right, where they want to make this film. Meantime, they'll make another film. Right? I'm not talking about that.
Yeah.
This is whatever film that I want to do next is my dream project.
Yeah, every project of yours is a dream project.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not like a backup option. It's not an option B kind of a thing. This is the film that I wanted to make. So it was a hard time for me to make him understand that, but you know what I'm saying. That's exactly what I meant.
Right. Well, thank you so much, and this has been a very interesting space that you revealed about being a writer. Because the thing is, it's not often that one comes across somebody who's very clear about what they want to do, and I think that clarity is something, or at least I hope that clarity is something you hold on to. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Wonder Diamond, South India's largest lab-grown diamond brand, stores at Chennai, Coimbatore, Bangalore and Hyderabad.